All right, wolfstreet.com, Wolf Richter's site. You know, I see these articles, man. These banks, I've told you from day one, when they are created, they're insolvent immediately. By the very nature of fractional reserve lending, where they lend out most of the money they have on hand, keeping essentially a fraction of your and my money in their account so that they can lend out the rest of it, usually 9 times to 1 or so. But in some instances, like when the last collapse happened in 08, some of them were a little more reckless than that. But these banks, the ECB, European Central Bank, again, they're trying to figure out, how do we get these sheeple to stop taking their money out of the bank? Every time one of our banks gets a little shaky, a little rocky, these dang people or sheeple come in and start pulling their money out. How do we stop that? Oh, I don't know. How about you change the fractional reserve nonsense bankster system? That's a start. See, they don't want to change their system because it benefits them greatly. It doesn't benefit you and I. So what they want to do is not fix the system and get rid of that garbage. Let's keep it in place and let's stop the people from pulling their own money out of our banks. Let's stop the people from taking their own money out of our banks. That's their solution. Ready? European Central Bank tightens noose around bank accounts, locking up the money of unsuspecting depositors to prop up collapsing banks. And think about this. I've been telling you about this house we're getting, right? We close in a couple of weeks or so. I couldn't have just said, oh, well, I've got my secret stash of cash out of the bank, and I got to get a house. You think I can get a mortgage while telling them, look, I know you want to see money in my bank account seasoned for 60 days where there's no deposit showing. I've got the cash in my hand. I've got a safe or whatever. Let's set the closing at this date and I'll bring the cash. Oh, no. We've got to see it. Okay, well, can we meet? Can I come meet the mortgage broker? Can I come meet you? I'll show it to you. I'll bring it in like a suitcase with the, handcuffs around my wrist with the thing. No. They'd laugh you off the stage. No. It has to be in a freaking bank, in a bank account. You want a mortgage? We need to see the money in a bank. So, I'm stuck leaving the money in the bank for the down payment of this house. I've been telling you about, which thankfully was crypto. So it wasn't like I had to take money out of somewhere and dump it in the bank. It was like, oh, I just turned a few thousand into tens of thousands. Down payment, here I come. I never really saw the money or touched it. Just instantly go to the bank account. Savings, okay. Wow, I've never had that much money in my bank account. Ever. Thanks to cryptos and Cliff Hive for nudging me into them constantly. And finally me taking the leap a while back. Anyways, point being, we got to use their damn system. And then they don't want us taking our money out. Once we put our money in, they don't want us taking it out. But I got to get a house. I got to put it in. And I'm going to transfer it to someone else who then puts it in their bank account. And if that person says, oh, well, we just sold the house to this guy, old J Snip 4, and yep, his down payment, everything, we got the money from the bank, good deal. I'd like to take that out. The bank's going to tell you, sorry, we don't have those funds here. We don't have that kind of fund. We don't have 50, 60, 70,000 sitting here in our bank account, bank vault today. So I'd have to place an order and tell you when to come back and get your money. And you might argue, well, it's like $60,000, $70,000. Okay. But I remember years ago trying to take out like 10 or 11K or something. And I had to go to 2 different bank branches, and I had to wait too to get it all done. We can give you 2,000 or 3,000 here today, and then you can go to that bank branch. And I said, well, if I have to wait till tomorrow anyways, then just when can I get it all at one branch? 2 days from now. Okay, I'll just go there. 10,000. A bank branch. You don't have $10,000 in there with all the customers coming in and out of here. Probably because even back then, hardly anyone had any money in their freaking bank account anyway. So why would they need those thousands of dollars? In my mind, you got hundreds and hundreds of customers in this bank easily, maybe thousands. You can't come up with, 10K? Is this real? That was kind of shocking. I remember that. I'll never forget it. Anyways, the European Central Bank, or ECB, arguably the European Union's most powerful and least accountable institution, apparently needs more power. According to Daniel Noy, the ECB's top supervisor, who the people of Europe voted in? Oh, no, he was handpicked by the club, like the rest of them. You don't vote for these people. Chief among the fresh powers it seeks is the power to temporarily prevent people from withdrawing their money from their accounts at banks that are in distress, including by electronic fund transfers. We don't want you taking your money out in cash. We don't want you doing it electronically. We don't want you transferring it out. We need the money here. When banks are in distress. Well, that's funny because it seems here recently there's been a number of banks in the European Union, as a matter of fact, that have had some problems and were absolutely in distress and would have been destroyed, collapsed, if the European Central Bank didn't step in. So you people, don't be nervous. Don't have a right to take your money out because it's fraud. The fraud the bank's been committing all these years, money laundering they've been involved in, risky, crappy loans, everything under the sun, completely wrong. Like those guys who went to jail in Spain, their bank. Remember those guys? Who I said the judge is probably insane. He's probably going to find himself dead for putting these guys in jail. Right? You seeing that crap happening at the bank, we don't want you taking your money out because that bank's now in distress. Well, yeah, it's in distress because these criminals have been running it. Nah, we don't want you taking money out. It's in distress, and you're going to cause it to go into more distress. See how that works? Heads they win, tails you lose. In my view, the introduction of adequate moratorium power for authorities is needed in order to react with the needed flexibility if the situation of a bank deteriorates rapidly, he told a member of the European Parliament in a letter. Given the potentially swift evolution of liquidity crises, a moratorium tool could be necessary to ensure there is adequate time for ensuring a credible solution, Noy said, adding that the ECB will soon publish an opinion on the issue. I wonder what the opinion's going to be. I think he already told us. The recent collapse and resolution of Spain's Banco Popular and Italy's Monte dei Paschi di Siena lent more impetus to this new regulatory push that has been quietly in the works for a while. Last year, the European Commission, the same entity that wants to impose increasingly draconian limits on the use of cash in Europe, proposed giving banking supervisors the authority to suspend some deposit withdrawals and payment obligations in exceptional circumstances. And I would say, well, when you create this little law or rule, make sure you define clearly what exceptional circumstance means. You know what it will say? No definition, just exceptional circumstance, which means they can tell you what an exceptional circumstance means and when it's actually happening. And you might find out that it's not when you thought it was, and now you can't get your money out because they declared that it was. But what was not enough to placate Europe's senior ranks of central bankers. Not what, but that was not enough. While the Commission proposal would exclude deposits under 100,000 euros, which to all intents and purposes are insured by their respective national governments, the Single Resolution Board has warned that significant amounts of cash could still leave the bank if the moratorium was excessively narrow. As such, if the new proposal is passed, and given that its passage will involve very little in the way of democratic process, that's more or less guaranteed. Payouts to insured depositors could be suspended for 5 working days. According to an Estonian document recently seen by Reuters, the freeze could have been extended to a maximum of 20 days in exceptional circumstances. All this furtive planning and plotting is happening against the backdrop of supposedly improving economic performance in the EU. Things are getting better. The bailouts work. See? Nothing to worry about. Then why do you need to put these kind of rules in place if everything's just fine? because it's not fine. You're being lied to, and it's why I come out here every day and do these videos. On Friday, the man in charge of the ECB, Super Mario Draghi, crowned that the global recovery is firming up, with the Eurozone apparently leading the way, while stressing the need, of course, for continued significant monetary policy, which means more printing, more quantitative easing. And that's an improvement. Printing more money and printing more money and more money to bail out these banks, to give them liquidity that they need. That's an improvement. Global recovery is firming up. No kidding. As Draghi well knows, if the ECB's lavish monetary policy was scaled back or, God forbid, withdrawn, its main beneficiaries, including some of Europe's biggest corporations and, of course, Draghi's home country of Italy, would not be able to afford the higher interest rates that would result from reduced bond purchases. Higher rates would effectively bankrupt the country. In that respect, Italians see Draghi as their guardian angel at the ECB, since the ECB bent its own rules on bank resolution out of all recognition earlier this summer to enable Italy's government to bail out Monte dei Paschi with taxpayer funds. Again, I said they would never do that again. It's a new rule, and they did it anyways. As well as insulate bondholders of all stripes from the financial fallout of the wind down of the two Veneto-based banks, Banco Popolare di Vicenza and Veneto Banca. Italy's banking sector is apparently on the mend, at least according to the country's banking elite, which converged this week on the shores of Lake Como for the annual Ambrosetti Forum. In the words of Jean-Pierre Moustier, Chief Executive Officer at UniCredit SPA, Italy's biggest bank, Italy has very strong fundamentals, and its healthy economic growth is pushed by exports, consumers, and investments. So the core banking activity in Italy is actually quite profitable. Oh, it's quite profitable because when you get bailed out by the government via the taxpayers, you still get your fat multi-million-dollar bonus your pay as a top head of the bank. You also get your golden parachute. That's going to happen because you're bailed out. Essentially, you're going to get your bonus levels paid, millions of dollars in bonuses because you did so good. Look at all the money that came in when I was running here. Excuse me, but a lot of it came from the taxpayer through the ECB. Shh. Don't mention that part, Jason. Leave that part out. I want my golden parachute. Shut your mouth. Okay. Let me continue. As Bank of Italy data shows, banks' operating profit for 2016 was down by 27%, mainly owing to a drop in income. And while shares of Italian banks may have jumped almost 8% since June, compared to with a 1% uptick in the Europe Stocks 600 Banks Index, that's almost certainly a reflection of investor relief, rather than a genuine belief that Italian banking system's deep-seated problems have been laid to rest with the recent interventions. 8% since June. You know what comes to my mind when I hear that? Cryptos. 8%. I wouldn't wipe your butt with 8% in a few days. We want these 2, 3, 4 times. Okay, now I'll look at it. Up 10% today. Up 20% next day. That's the kind of numbers we're used to seeing. The banking stock up 8% since June, July, August, September, almost 3. What? Haven't y'all heard of cryptos? What are y'all doing? This is ancient. You're trying to keep this ancient system afloat. As Jim McGohan, CEO of Principal Global Investors, told Bloomberg, the European banking system as a whole, and the Italian banking system in particular, has a questionable level of capital, and that could lead to problems in the next economic slowdown. Quote, for many banks, prosperity is very dependent on continuity of the economic momentum, he said, and continuity of the current reality, something that is far from guaranteed, especially given it depends almost entirely on the continued monetary support provided by the European Central Bank, which boasts a negative policy rate, negative interest, and the biggest balance sheet of any central bank on planet Earth. Yeah. Hey, ECB, by the way, how do you guys plan on unwinding that balance sheet? Hint, they don't, and they won't, and they can't. The ECB knows that more banks will collapse, which is why it's taking preemptive steps now to ensure that the next time an important bank begins to wobble, it can swoop down and freeze its customers' deposits, insured or not. Unbeknownst to hundreds of millions of European citizens, the ECB is quietly tightening a noose around their savings. Even Italian banks are dumping Italian government bonds. Read, "What's keeping Italy's government debt from blowing up?" from Wolf Richter. Again, there'll be a link here. You can check it out if you'd like. They don't do this stuff. You know, when things are recovering and everything's looking good, you don't take extra measures, and the measures you take are telegraphing things are not looking good. Hey everybody, the Titanic, everything's good. We patched up the hole. But we're gonna go ahead and man the lifeboats. We're gonna go ahead and man these lifeboats now. We need a new rule, so we don't have to ask. We just need to get these lifeboats manned ASAP. Excuse me. You just said the hole's patched. Ship is gonna come back up. You know, sort of down a little bit. It's coming back up. The water's being pumped out. Recovery mode is on. Why do you need to load those lifeboats up all of a sudden? Maybe he'll pull Bernanke. It's just tradition. Just tradition. Right. Take care.